Hey guys, Hejnewar here, and in this video I will take a look at one of the four factions of Song of Conquest, Barony of Loth. Barony of Loth is an unholy coalition between dead and the living, bringing death and glorious afterlife to all who oppose them. Their roster is composed of 3 cultists, 4 undead creatures and a fearsome beast. But as always, I will be starting with Wielders of Loth. Ambertina is first on the list, and she is all about destruction, attacking, damage dealing, because of her specialization and skill in destruction, as well as 15 points in offense. In my opinion, she is a very middle of the road wielder. She is good at any time, not really amazing. Early game her army could have better synergy with her, but overall she is simply very balanced, and her army is like that too. Baron Alduus of Loth is kind of all over the place. Specialization in arcane essence, skill in unit damage, army with 3 different units, very versatile but really not great at anything. His army is also average at best when it comes to strength. A very average wielder. Brother Healer. He is definitely one word. Rats. And the rats are amazing. And so he is amazing too. His starting army is in my opinion best in the whole faction. His specialization is very good and skill is very useful as well. Very good wielder from early to the late game. Probably one of the best in the game. Coral Lightbringer is quite a defensive wielder, which I think is really not that great with Loth. His stats are 10 in offense and 5 in defense. Personally, I would swap them to make him more specialized, and I would also give him some ranged units to actually justify having specialization and skill in defense. His army is one of the weakest too. Dr. Marjata. She is a special wielder, losing stats and starting with only 5 and 5 with seemingly no compensation, but starting with so much essence. Scholar, arcane essence, skill, and spell damage specialization must be good, right? Yes, and no. Her army is weak, losing Scholar is terrible for you, and you don't even have many units to shield him. She does have fantastic spell output, but in the late game she is no better than any other spell damage wielder, and she starts with losing 5 points of stats for that. In the end, she is best during mid game, but before and after she is not really that great in my opinion. Magnolia Silverling. She is the troops movement specialist. And as for all of them until this point, she also has gold generation skill. Her stats are focused more on the offense and honestly, I really like her. She is second or maybe even best wielder to make rat stacks with, and her skill is really making it easy for you to justify it from even earlier stages, as you have no need to build crafts. An upgraded craft gives you 150 gold, and this skill gives you 350 gold, which is over twice as much. That also allows you to save on a small construction spots that are so valuable in Loth. All of this lets your rat stacks roll with much less economic stress, much less building slots stress, and +1 movement for troops is really nice on rats. She starts with second strongest starting army in the faction, and she is also pretty cute. Great wielder. Merkov is super thematic wielder. Completely focused on the offense, his skill is in melee offense, his specialization is in offense for undead, his starting army is average, but overall he is just weak victim of his circumstances. Undead are mostly just balanced, and the rats are not. If rats will ever be balanced, I believe that he will rise to prominence just as he rised from dead. Roderick of the Loth is all over the place. Wielder movement skill is obviously good, but his specialization is defense of human troops. which is really not great. Human troops are mostly ranged, only cultists aren't, and they are not great really. And this won't help change that. Also, his starting army is not really even entirely made out of humans, and it is overall pretty bad. Overall, in my opinion, he is a pretty bad wielder. And lastly, we have not very exciting wielder, Vaish the Returned, and it is pretty standard hero. Specialization in Arcana Essence and skill in Order Essence, army is third strongest. Everything else is pretty much standard. He is a good average wielder. Usually I would start with rats, but this time I will leave them for last, as showing them first will most likely distort the picture of other units. So, starting with Oathbound and Legionaries. And both base version and upgrade do similarly well. And both are decent, but their use is slightly different. Oathbounds are very decent against pure melee attackers, meanwhile Legionaries pay quite a bit more for protection against ranged damage. Still, Legionaries are way better if you don't have enough space in your armies. Nice cost-effective units. Cultist and Oathsingers, honestly, early game I like both of them, especially Oathsingers, but they stop being viable as units very soon. They stay as alright essence generators, but that is it. And the reason for that is their small stack size. Only 20 units is way too low to be ever viable as soon as you have Wielder filled with troops. They are alright for their cost, ability has very limited impact, but is still better than nothing. But if only they had 30 troops in a stack from the very beginning and a slightly higher growth, at least Oathsingers would be a nice alternative to Legionaries. After changes, toxicologists are still fine, but using whole building slot just for them is quite bad, and you can't even upgrade them, because bases are really bad, not cost-effective units. They are strong, but for their price, they are absolutely terrible. You would need to have hundreds of Celestial ore to even consider using it for recruitment of them. In the end, this line is not worth it. Scholars are bad. If you are getting them just for them, they are not worth it. But their upgrade is completely different story. Whole strategies are based around this one unit and its ability. Essence that you provide is very high and can really help you in pretty much every stage of the game. Really nice unit. Necromancer Doomstack with some other essence generator, mainly Oathsingers for Order Essence, is second best Loth Doomstack in my opinion. Scavenged Bones are one of my favorite units, really nice and doing well in many situations, but in my opinion they have the same problem that cultists have, their stack size. It is too small. For early game I like them. Blessed Bones are also really good and additionally can sacrifice one of themselves to summon 15 temporary Oathbounds. I don't like to do this, but sometimes this is just enough to turn the tides and get some power boosts faster or win key fight in PvP. It is not that valuable, but if the units were to die anyway, it's much better than nothing and also creates some interesting decisions for player to make. I really like them, if only their stack size was higher. Spectres and Snitchels are also really nice units, cost effective and good in terms of strength. But what I truly like about specifically Snitchels is their ability. It is just so nice to support ranked stacks, especially against tanky enemies like dragons. Plus 1 damage and plus 20 melee offense is so good at boosting rats and lets them take less casualties. It also generates a lot of essence and ignores enemy zone of control. This makes them even better at supporting rats with them. Such a nice unit. Second to last we have Legions and High Legions. And I love their design, such a cool unit. They are also alright and cost effective, but in my opinion a bit too weak for a tier 3 unit. The abilities in case of this unit are really nice. Protecting others is very thematic for High Legions. They also should be intimidating and have sweeping attacks for hordes. I really like their design. They are just a bit too weak. And finally, Rats and Plague Rats. The strongest, most cost effective, most stack effective unit of this faction. Absolute powerhouse, losing against almost nothing, and even when losing, usually still inflicting more damage than they are worth. Very easy to spam, very cheap, very unstoppable, to the point where the easiest way to combat them is simply avoiding them. And perhaps the craziest, players still find out new ways to make them more OP. Enraging with spells, teleporting, boosting beyond belief, boosting with shells. No matter what, players still manage to find ways to make them even better. They single-handedly shatter pretty balanced roster of Barony of Loth, and devs still haven't nerfed them. At this point, it is easy to say that they are pretty much pets of this community. Spam them. Lastly, when it comes to research, you can only get the ones for rats, because even with all that research, rats still will be the most cost-effective units and will also have only slightly inferior strength per full stack than High Legions have. For that reason, it's probably better to take rats out of the equation. Then, the research is actually pretty good. It brings legionaries to the level of rats, just slightly bit below. Oath Singers and Toxicologists also benefit a lot from them, but both suffer from small stack size, and in case of Toxicologists, upgrading them is a waste. Necromancers are also nicely benefiting from research, but I think that they are just a bit below the level that I would use. Blessed Bones are getting really cost effective, but their stack is really bad because of small size. Snitchals are really awesome, you might get research for them just so they can boot rats better. And finally, High Legions. They are awesome after research. The ability that they get from research is really great and super cool. Not only they don't get countered when attacking, they also provide no counter to everyone else. Such a great value, and in the end their stack is the strongest, but cost effectively against rats it is just not there. Still very cool and good unit. As always, I will be ending this with a tier list, but it won't be very informative this time. I hope you all enjoyed it. Rana review won't come for some time, but it will for sure come at some point. Unfortunately, reviews are pretty work intensive for me to create. Well, that is it for this video. I hope you all liked it, and I will see you next time. Cheers!